Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video. Today we've got yet another reaction video. This particular episode is something called Middle Ground, where they'll have two very opposing views of groups of people and they'll give them a prompt much like the other one of Spectrum, and people have to come in, and if they agree with it they'll speak on their opinion. They'll all then come together and have one long conversation. Quick context about me: I'm a trans-masked non-binary person who has gone through top surgery. I'm not currently on any sort of HRT, and nor do I currently want to get any sort of bottom surgeries. So that's me. I don't identify in any way, shape or form as a trans man, even though non-binary is under the trans umbrella. Let's see what they got for us.
If you agree with the prompt, masculinity is disappearing in America.
Oh, I hate this. Oh, here we go. Here we go. This is going to be an interesting one.
I think that masculinity is disappearing. I think that it's a concerted effort to emasculate men.
Is it though?
I think that some people feel threatened by masculinity,
yes,
and the typical way that men carry themselves.
Feeling threatened by men is a real thing. Like, I was on the tube the other day and there was a group of maybe 7 or 8 cishet looking lads, and I was wearing this shirt. I had it open, I had my top surgery scars showing. They were all pointing at me, they were all looking at me. Yeah, I despite me presenting really masked, any time that I've had any sort of like issue of potentially being followed home or had people point and stare, 98% of the time it has been what I would assume, and I don't want to make any assumptions, but what I would assume to be cis-het males.
Leading families and different things like that. So I think that there's an effort to mitigate strong men in America.
There's a few different ways to think about masculinity, but just looking at the definition of the term 50 years ago, you had people like John Wayne, you had Martin Luther King, you had Sean Connery. You think of like
interesting examples.
Features as in beards, hairy chests, big muscles.
Women can have beards. Women can have beards. Apparently body hair and facial hair is only attributed to men.
Stoic, being brave, being rugged, being a provider. Today you have people like Harry Styles and Timothy Chalamet. You have people that are completely contrary to what we were looking at back then, and those values. Hating on
Harry Styles and Timothy Chalamet for expressing their identities and expressing themselves. Clothes are not gender. Gender and sex are a bloody social construct.
Are completely devalued.
I do believe that masculinity is going downhill, especially if you look at like the testosterone levels. Now the testosterone levels for guys is going down compared to generations before us. So yeah, I agree.
See that masculinity is under attack completely, but my definition of masculinity, like you said, has a lot to do with the traits that are associated with it. As a gay man, I mean, of all of us, I'm not the most masculine man, but I do think that the good aspects of masculinity are definitely under attack, but I don't think that it's
good aspects
being channeled in different ways.
It depends on how you look at it, because a lot of the traits can also be embodied in women and femininity. So when you look at masculinity, I think that we have to also look at what is the actual definition of femininity and masculinity.
Agreed.
And if we're defining masculinity by being stoic or muscles or body parts,
only men can have muscles.
Then is it really masculinity?
A lot of times when you guys spoke about masculinity, you associate it with men being manly, but I think more women are embracing their masculinity. Masculinity is still there, and just other genders are using it. Being courageous, being powerful, more women are standing in their power, which is again associated with masculine, but it's not specific to just men. Women are no longer submissive, they're dominant. Women don't need men, and I think that most of America is realizing that anyone can be powerful on their own.
I believe that the masculine traits are inherently in men, and men have to take a position. You made a really good point by saying women are now becoming more masculine. They feel as if they don't need men, which I think is the problem here. I think that the way we've been designed by God, in my opinion, is that men are to lead, men are to be strong,
not God.
Men are to be brave. Men have to take their rightful position. The way our country has been
My guy is the definition of a patriarchy right here. He's like, men need to lead, men need to provide, we've got to do everything.
structured to this point have been because of strong men who have taken a stand, who have fought wars. Now I feel like it's getting so lopsided that our families are degrading. People don't know where they're at in this country.
Now in 2022, masculinity is being redefined.
It is.
I think what happens is
agree.
people get upset when things start to change. No, I think
people
that
can't handle
nobody ever
change.
wants to take that away from men. I think that what we want to do in the world now is start to understand what is masculinity, and it's always been really associated with this very machismo space. Not just biological men. There's also trans men or people who want to be masculine. So I think what's happening now is people are pushing against change because change is scary and people don't understand. And so I think men, biological men, feel under attack. When I think that's not what's happening here.
The point that you made is 100% correct.
They do feel
there are
under
different
attack.
phases and people are experiencing in different ways. The feminist movement is, I think they are attacking masculinity within men.
I'm sorry, Mr. Patriarchy over here is just saying that feminism is attacking men. Oh, feminism is about equality, right? It's about wanting the same things that men have had for decades. Same rights, same pay, same opportunities.
I don't want a man to open the door for me. I don't need a man in my life. I can do all these different things. What they're doing is attacking men, and that's
how is that attacking men?
What part of the feminist group feels like it's attacking? Because I know that most feminism is like wanting equal pay or...
Well, you just said that women not needing men is somehow empowering. You know, having a man is somehow less empowering, or being an individual is somehow less
But that's how
empowering.
women feel.
Right.
Women actually are saying that because that's how they feel. It's as
But
if,
that's not how every woman feels.
but
That-
no one's
that's just
saying
an
every woman.
assumption
They're only
of
saying
how
women speak for themselves. So
Right.
all of you are going to have different opinions as biological men.
Absolutely.
Women all have different opinions. Oh, you see a very specific group of women saying this.
I mean, you did just say that's how women feel. So are you speaking on behalf of all
No,
women?
no, I'm not. Let me take that back. So, the women
What?
who are saying that feel that way.
No, women are now embracing masculinity, which means that they are now more empowered because they don't need a man. Or
Right.
if
When
they're
men feel empowered when women need
But
them.
I don't think that women's empowerment comes from having a man or not having a man. So why is it always associated that, you know, a woman's now empowered because she doesn't need a man? A woman has always been empowered. Women have never been.
But they've never felt
That's
that.
not
empowered.
true.
I mean,
That's
if
not
we go
true.
back to the 1920s, if you're going to do that, but that's not
But
what
of
we're talking
course,
about.
you
We're
have-
talking about society right now.
Right now, you actually think women are empowered right now?
Absolutely.
There's a right and wrong way to be a man.
Remember, it's step forward if you agree. No one should move forwards. Ugh.
I think that when I originally heard the question being asked, I didn't agree with it.
Good.
But men are not abusive individuals. Men are not to be cowards.
Oh.
Men are
There
to
we go.
lead their families.
Ugh.
And men who do not display that, I don't believe that they are men, in my opinion. And all of the qualities that I see in my...
I agree on the abusive front. But everything else, like, there is no right or wrong way to be any gender identity because it's however you feel and however you are empowered by it and however you identify, and it doesn't really matter what anyone else says. No one can dictate how you identify and how you present yourself.
My father is what I believe a man should be.
All of those characteristics are what make a man, and when I see a man be a coward in the truth, in just speaking the truth, or...
There's nothing
speaking
wrong
up
with
right,
cowardice.
especially today in America with everything going on, I'm like...
If you're scared of something,
those are
you're
not
scared of
men.
something.
I don't believe there's any wrong way to be a man. We're just redefining what it means to be a man.
But there are things that naturally come to men, so when you say we're just redefining what being a man is, you have to understand you're redefining...
Why is he getting so sassy?
...the human race and got it to where it is today. So just like aimlessly throwing out, oh, well, we're just redefining what it is to be a man. That's not just like a light subject that we should be talking about.
Why do we have to stay the same? Why do we need to have the same thing for hundreds and hundreds of years?
Do you not see the state
It's not the
of...
same thing. It's just, it's keeping the same qualities.
But do you see the state of our world today? It's not perfect. It's been led by men like throughout all of history.
Agreed.
Look where it's...
Yeah, I don't know why they're getting so vexed about redesigning the definition of a man. Because again, gender's a social construct.
What it means to be a man. So what do you want to bring to traditional men?
I think
Traditional men.
vulnerable. I think that a lot of men want to portray strength, 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 but men are people, and I know that men have feelings.
Yep.
Being a man and masculinity, those are two different things. And
Vulnerability is such an important thing.
we can redefine whatever that means to anybody by including other types of men or other types of masculinity. I myself am a father, I have a child. Some people disagree with me being a father because I am transgender. But that being said, I present to the world as male, my child sees me as a man.
There's proper ways to be vulnerable, right? You don't have to break down in front of you suffer silence as well. Strong men,
no.
I believe
No, absolutely not. Suffering in silence, I strongly disagree with this so much. The concept of having to suffer in silence is what leads to so many mental health issues, and it leads to such high suicide rates.
The qualities that you guys are referring to, I think the problem is overcorrection, right? Some people believe that men need to cry and lay on the ground and be feminine, like women.
How is crying a feminine thing? Crying is a thing that everyone does. And how is laying on the ground a thing that women do? What? I don't understand how they jump to these absolutely ridiculous conclusions on some of these statements.
I have male privilege.
Everyone should step forward. I think everyone should step forward in this.
I've lived both lives, and I can tell you firsthand that it does exist. I am taken much more seriously in my career since I've transitioned as a man. Prior to transitioning, I would work just as hard, if not harder, for the same position and not be considered. The minute that I transition, I am immediately taken more seriously.
I think the word privilege is the thing that turns a lot of people off with this conversation. But that being
Probably.
said, again, myself living my life as a female, pretty much half my life, and then now half my life as a man, there is no way I could not be honest about the fact that my life has changed drastically. Also being a white man, that's also a conversation a lot of people don't want to have. But I have privilege of being white and privilege also of being a man.
What you all are saying as far as like transitioning, but as a black man, privilege looks way different for me, because if I'm walking down
I can imagine.
I'm seen as a threat by police, by women, by anybody else, being seen as a man is where my privilege stops and where everything else.
Very interesting.
So I don't see it as privilege.
Okay, I got a lot to say about this tough.
Oh, of course you do.
First of all, I mean, we have to be transparent and honest with each other. You know, I think that not everybody on this side presents 100% like if I saw you.
What the fuck? What? He's just pointed at someone that because one of the trans guys doesn't have a beard, this is going to definitely this is going to be where it is. Think about the conservative people, right? Not all of them have a beard. Why is he now singling out one of them? You don't single people out like this. I feel sorry for this guy, and if it like triggers his dysphoria in this situation, because that is such a shit thing to do.
I wouldn't think you were men. You know, men have it really hard in this world.
Do they?
The wars have been fought by men. They
Okay.
die in the hundreds of thousands. Men commit suicide more. Men work more to dangerous
At least
jobs.
it's covered.
You know, if somebody broke in this place right now, who are they going to expect to defend everybody in here? It's going to be the men. If your family fails, they're not looking at your wife. They're not. They're looking at the man. You know,
Right.
I just want people
Called
to
the
understand
patriarchy that's done that for us.
advantages that men have, and also men do struggle in custody and all kinds of different
Oh no,
things. in
100%.
society.
I 100% agree with you as a man now, right? But what I think my perception of it is different than yours, because you were born male, you were raised male, you have a whole other space in that, and I totally respect your opinion on that, and I believe that that is a true lived experience as a born man.
Yeah, and let me add with the black man, because we have a total different reality in it. I don't, in no way, form, or fashion do I go into a room and I feel like I'm less than. I think I command presence when I go into a room because the way I'm dressed and I'm tall. I go in the street.
Interesting.
I person across the street. I've never been attacked by a police officer. I was a police officer. You know, I've been pulled over probably 3 times in my entire life.
I mean, my biggest question with this and why I don't necessarily agree with it is because when it comes to privilege, there's not really a way to quantify it. It's very subjective.
Oh, here we go.
So like your version of male privilege and your version of male privilege are very different.
So it's hard to see the other side because you never lived it. The difference between you and us is we see it because we've lived it. You have not. So it's easy to
Thank you,
say,
Jacob.
Like, well, it doesn't exist. Well, how would you know?
Well, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I think everybody has certain privileges, but what I think the question here is what defines male privilege over women? Because women have privilege privileges too. So is there a graph that you guys are calculating to make men have more than women, or what?
The privilege is not acknowledging what you have that comes so easy.
So do you think that your fear, because you live both sides, do you think your fear is something that you have in your mind, or you think it's a reality? Because let me say this: you never really changed as a person. You're the same person.
Right,
that
exactly.
You were. So you
well, I'm glad he's acknowledged that.
You did when you were a woman.
No.
You don't?
No, my strength is entirely different after
what percentage would you say?
More than 100%.
Okay.
I weigh like
but
100 pounds,
but
now I weigh like 133.
you're still not probably as strong as me.
But it's not about strength.
Can we, okay, look at the size difference between these two guys. This Brandon and Jacob, right? Brandon's easily like 6'3" or some giant height, right? And he's asking Jacob, like, you're probably not as strong as me. This hurts my brain. Testosterone helps you be strong. Everyone has testosterone in their system, whether you're AMAB, whether you're AFAB, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. Everyone has testosterone in their system, some more than others, right? But if you were to bloody strength train, then I'm sure if Jacob were to be hitting the gym and doing weights all the time, and Brandon wasn't, I'm sure he'd still be stronger because you're just conditioning yourself.
Women are targeted. Men are not targeted. I mean, maybe sometimes. I'm not saying it's never going to happen.
They're targeted by other men.
Right. But women are targeted by other men. I think women have less of a safe space.
Agreed.
Men don't have a safe space. If you go to certain
But I'm talking
cities,
about
they get murdered by
okay, but I'm not
men.
talking about certain cities. I'm talking about everyday life.
Yeah, every day.
Not
I think that's a blanket statement.
Have you been attacked as a woman?
I have. I've been raped. I've been attacked. I can go on and on and on. I was homeless, living in the streets, raped all the time. It happens. It's a real thing. I didn't
Jesus.
think I was on the street getting raped.
But men do get raped.
100%. But the experience of it.
Brandon is very much doing the whole, oh, but what about X? Whereas the trans guys are trying to be like, yeah, so when we presented as women, even though they weren't, pre their transitions, they were like, yeah, we did get attacked and assaulted.
You get catcalled down the street, like.
I mean, women say things to me. When I was a police officer.
Do you feel threatened? You feel empowered though, right?
No, I don't feel empowered. I feel that that's.
But do you feel scared? Do you feel threatened when a woman catcalls you?
No, I don't. But I don't feel threatened if a man try to challenge.
Because you have that male privilege.
Right. As a woman,
what if a man was whistling at you when you're walking down the street?
I've had it happen to me. I had gay men whistle to me.
Then how does that make you feel?
I don't.
Okay, cool.
I mean, as long as you don't touch me, we cool.
Right.
I know you may think I'm attractive.
Right.
That's fine. It's cool. I
think women will say the same thing, as long as you're not like trying to be predatory. And I've seen it because I go to clubs with my friends who are girls, and I have to tell the men to literally leave them alone because they keep going. And they're predatory. They're literally scouting out women that are drunk or whatever. Not even drunk. You could say no 1,000 times, and they're still gonna bother something. They stop.
Women are not as strong as men, and they get targeted. Sure, yes, that is a privilege that men have over women, but that doesn't mean that men have privilege because of that one situation.
Interesting.
Men commit suicide way more than women do.
Because if we're gonna go that route,
here we
trans
go.
men commit suicide twice the rate.
But that's not general.
I think what's important here is to
The life expectancy, the life expectancy rate of trans people is significantly smaller than cis people. I don't know what the percentage is, but I know it's a lot higher. Yes, men commit suicide more than women.
distinguish the fact that, yes, no one is negating the fact that women can get preyed on. You know, there's situations where this happens, right? Like, no one's going to deny that.
Good. No one should.
Say that it's not like a one-sided coin here, where there's no like men are just, you know, we just have it good and we can do whatever we want.
No, again, I live as a man, so I see the difference.
Yeah.
When I said I have privilege and I walk into a room, of course, but then there's other things that are expected of me now as a man that I would never do.
Interesting.
So would you guys agree that there's such thing as female privilege?
Oh, sure, 100%.
My wife has privilege because she has me.
That's right.
My wife has privilege because she has me. Sure, bud. Sure. Keep it going. Keep up that vibe. We love this for you. Oh yeah. Totally, mate.
She don't have to worry about her safety because I'm there.
I don't believe that as a man, it's like, you know, there's marketing for women-owned brands. Like I said, I can't be the next Sprinkler Justice. Like, women are very much more empowered today, which I think is...
Yes, they are.
I mean, like,
because they're standing up for themselves.
I think that the man I am, I probably have privilege because I'm, 6 foot 210. Like, no one's picking on me when I walk down the street. I used to live in Chicago, and I used to walk home all the time at night, but like, was that smart? Probably not, but I felt a little safe because, I'm not 5 foot 100 pounds.
Biology determines gender.
So, sex and gender, people try to argue that they're different, but
they are different.
Go hand to hand, and our biology
they do go hand in hand, but they're different.
Comes down to every fiber within our body. So whether that be DNA, chromosomes, testosterone levels.
Fun fact, mate. Everyone is technically born a woman. Not born, but everyone starts off as a woman, as AFAB, and then your lower region of bodily parts develop into further things.
Bone density.
Bone density.
A whole bunch of different factors that go into it, and it all has to do with biology.
So biology, I 100% believe in biology. Today we talk about biology being a social concept.
This is where we're going to start disagreeing.
As a transgender person, I was born biologically female. I always acknowledge that.
Good.
Today I live as a man. Now that being said,
interesting.
Sex and gender, they are trying to separate those things. Gender can be, I've chosen my gender. As you see, nobody would, I think, probably understand that I used to be a female. Now, many people do, like you just said, believe that sex and gender are one thing and you can never change those. I'm not trying to change anything. I'm trying to show the world that this is how I feel by presenting the outside. But I think denying biology is where we...
No one... Who denies biology? What?
Seen as a man, then, like, right on. Who are you to... I don't care. I mean, you do you. Whatever makes you happy. But I think, like, it becomes a slippery slope. Like, how are we going to deny basic human facts?
Basic human facts.
I think that causes problems, and it causes problems for me.
Yeah.
Because the minute I start denying your biology, now you feel attacked by me. And I don't want you to feel attacked by me. I never want you to feel, I want to be a part of, if that makes sense. You don't have to agree with my choice of how I live my life, but all I ask for is respect.
What do you have on your driver license?
Your gender identity, I strongly believe your gender identity is not a choice. Some people will disagree. Buck disagrees with it. No one chooses to be born into the wrong body. No one chooses to be born with the wrong, like, body parts with things that make them dysphoric. No one chooses that. No one's going to actively want that. Who would actively want dysphoria? And this guy that's asking about birth certificate and driving licenses. Did you know? I don't think he realizes you can change all of this.
So that being said, I transitioned to live as a man 29 years ago. So that was way before you see any of this stuff. And I had to acknowledge my biology, right? That being said, my license, I travel the world. It has to say male. Can you imagine if I showed up at the airport, they're like, female? Dude, there's something going on here. But I actually got my birth certificate changed to male. I was the first person to do that here in Los Angeles. But that being said,
well done. Congratulations.
To do that now, looking forward today.
Oh.
Because I never thought we would be having this conversation.
I'm glad you said that because I love that people can express themselves. We live in America.
You do live in America. Well done.
I believe what my religion is. I love that people can live their best life. I'll never ever in my life protest or try to go against a person who wants to identify. The problem is when you begin to try to change language, you begin to
change language.
Then therefore it changes on the children, and all of that becomes problematic. If a person says, okay, I acknowledge I'm born as a man or a woman, but I want to identify as this, cool, I respect that.
Good, as you should.
Want to see it that way, and some people may be a little more ambiguous. I wouldn't never disrespect you. I'll call you by your name.
That's right.
Whatever name that you want to be associated with, I'll do that. And I think
good.
If everybody in the country can get on that same page, I think we'll see less division.
I've noticed in a lot of the trans individuals that I've met, the older generation who had it a lot harder in society to be accepted is a lot more willing to have the conversation.
We didn't have social media. I didn't have cell phones. I didn't have computers when I transitioned. This is how you build bridges.
So I love this question. With trans folks, biology does change. Our bone density does change. Our muscle structure does change. Our testosterone levels do change.
Imagine such a thing.
Biologically, we do change. Anatomically, now that's where surgeries come into play.
Yep.
So when we're talking about biology and gender that can't be changed, our biology absolutely and concretely changes.
Not the DNA.
But our
DNA does not change.
Yeah, DNA is not going to change for anyone.
So you acknowledge there's a biological difference between males and females, because some people on the other side would
But
say
obviously.
difference, like a female, like I could look like a girl, not having testosterone, but I'm still a male.
Some people are male, some people are female, chromosomally. But when we start to take testosterone, our bodies do biologically change.
Well, yeah,
What about
of course they
men
would.
who don't take testosterone?
Then their bodies don't biologically
That means then they're
change.
biologically still female, right?
Well, then
This problem right here. Not every trans man has to take testosterone in order to be trans. A lot of people do. Some people don't. If you identify as a man, you identify as a man, right? Not all trans men have to be on testosterone. A lot of people do choose to do it, but some don't. And that's their choice. But they're still a man at the end of the day.
And gender in itself is something we get to choose.
I disagree.
That's right.
Just like you said.
Well, in your life, you get to choose. Not you don't get to choose it for the world, but you get to choose.
No,
it for
I
the
get to
world.
choose my gender. I've been testosterone for 10 years. Okay, going on 11 years.
But there's some anatomy that will never change.
That's right.
Right? I mean, you still have ovaries. You still have
Yes.
the female reproductive system. You said that you had a child.
Yes, I've given birth. I no longer have female reproductive.
Right, but you had that.
Everything can be yeeted, everything can be replaced, and especially how quickly some of these surgeries are advancing. You never know if some things might be able to be fully functioning, you know? I haven't done much research about bottom surgeries, and
Never get male productive organs.
Now, when you think about it, the male and female productive organs are similar, and they're nearly the same. They're different. They're different in size. Okay, biologically,
And they're different in
different
functionality too.
Not necessarily,
What do you-
because the testes and the ovaries are very much similar. One is an egg, one is a fertilizer,
But
and
we
that's
can
the
never,
difference.
But I never can produce sperm.
You're absolutely
ever,
right.
Ever.
You're absolutely right.
And they can never produce ova.
And you guys are saying that gender is like a social construct. Is that what you're saying too? That you could change it?
time is social
Everything's
construct.
a social construct if you want to think about it that way.
Okay.
If you have set truths, then we can't change those truths. If you want to say you're trans man, that means you're a biological female that thinks that
No,
you're a male.
I am a biological male anatomically.
See, he's gonna have
Anatomically,
different
I'm
version
still
of it than,
right.
and I think it's really important that you understand we're all gonna have
and it's
different views.
anatomic, okay? Because biologically, I have shifted. Okay?
Very interesting.
Transmitting, going from one to the next.
Yes.
Biologically and all these things, I know that there's importance for you guys, but meeting me or seeing me, you would never know. So why is it important?
Well, no,
Like,
because
you know,
just say
but I'm just
if I
curious.
was a woman, just say if I was a woman and I wanted to date you, what are you gonna tell me?
I would tell you that I'm trans. What do you mean?
No, I'm saying you can't tell me that you're a man.
I mean, I'm still a man.
No, but you
I'm a
gotta tell me.
transgender.
Oh, here we go.
that you were born a woman.
It's the whole thing of what's in your pants. I've had a situation like this. If anyone's seen my top surgery vlog, the first Pride that I went out after surgery, someone like pointed at my scars and was like, "Oh, you know, have you done the full thing?" It's weird asking trans people what's in their pants. Stop it. Stop it. Stop asking trans and non-binary people. You wouldn't ask cis people, you know, unless you wanted to date them or sleep with them, you know, but it's still weird unless you have the intention of sleeping with said person. Stop. It's weird. Quit it.
I mean, I don't have to.
Well, because if I go down, if I see
Right.
you in your pants,
Right.
I'm gonna see something different, and that will be troubling to me.
Will it though?
But
Why does it bother you?
Leading off the topic, but I mean, to answer your question, if you must know, I do tell the person that I'm talking to or interested that I'm transgender. I don't think that you need it to, you know, you don't need a penis to be a man. And I know that you made this.
100%.
Like, I get
You
it,
don't.
But I don't want one.
Now, I have a question for all of you. Do your penises make you men?
Good question.
Like, no,
Part of what
that
makes
is,
me a man,
is
yeah.
that what makes you
Well, I
men?
said being a man's ingrained within every part of your body, so our cells are.
Right,
yes, our penis too,
but if
someone was before-
you had to look at the difference between us and between you, now would that difference be the lack of a penis?
If we were naked,
Okay.
I mean, it-
So if we're gonna minimize being a man to that particular anatomy,
We didn't minimize.
No. I'm asking the question. Okay.
Oh.
If we minimize it,
Keep
because
talking
this is
over
where
each
we're going
other.
Is anatomy, right? Because that's where we've gotten.
The basic
Okay.
biology, yeah.
So if we get there, so do your penises make you more men than us?
They're gonna say yes.
It's not making more or less. It's we're a biologically man. You're not a biological man.
It's not a spectrum, so it's not a question that we can answer, because you're saying on the spectrum, would this make us more of a man than you? But no, it's because we are a man and you guys aren't.
Well, we're different.
So we're not men.
We're
is
different.
Exactly what you just said.
In my view, you guys are appropriating the gender.
These trans guys are being told that they're not men, but they're women. And that they're appropriating gender. Oh dear Lord.
And you are living as a man.
Yeah, because they are men.
You are not a man.
But they are men.
So to me, it's not, you can't say, okay, well, does that make us more of a man? That's not even a question to ask, because you're not a biological man.
But they are.
When it comes down to asking questions that make me start to change what the truth is and what the truth isn't, putting it on a spectrum when it's an objective truth.
But it's not your truth, it's someone else's truth.
It doesn't make you... It doesn't make what you feel any different. The biological truth is the truth, and why can't that be the truth? And you also say, but I feel like on the inside that I'm a man and I'm going to present that way.
The argument is that people try to invalidate who
They need to stop touching them
I'm not saying you
mics.
guys are doing that, but a lot of society in the world does that. Well, biologically, you're female. What hurts trans people that people don't realize what they're doing is it's very harmful. You gotta be aware of what you're saying, what you're putting out there. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, 100%. I would, and that's why I think we all agree. We would never try to offend you or anything like that. To be honest, I saw any.
We would never try to offend you, and yet all of them there pretty much just said that you're not men, but you're women. How is that not offensive?
One of you in the streets, I don't care. It's not going to bother me that you want to. I would know unless I pulled your pants down or something. Why do you feel like you have to present the way you do? You know, facial hair. Could you be a man without having facial hair?
Yes.
Because you feel like you're a man.
I'm in the early stages of testosterone. Haven't hit 1 year yet, but personally for me, you know, I crave, you know, having a full-on beard like these fine gentlemen. You guys, like I crave it, you know, like.
you know, it was really hard for me to continue living, especially when puberty hit. You know, like time of month comes in, obviously anatomy changes, like, and that was the biggest thing for me where I knew that, like, okay, I can't do this. It's like you're not in your own home.
Children should be allowed to transition.
Yes.
Well, I was gonna say, I find it very interesting that you and I are the only ones that stepped up, especially since we're younger, and
you should allow.
Kids should be able to transition socially. Stuff like puberty blockers, I think, yes, help. Again, as far as I'm aware, in the UK, and I think most other countries, you aren't allowed to get any sort of surgeries until 18. Social transitions, i.e. name changing, pronoun changing, stuff like that, I strongly agree with. Kids should be able to do that. Medical transition is a whole different kettle of fish. I think between 16 and 18, when you're in those key stages of, like, developing things, like testosterone and estrogen and stuff like that, I think should be allowed. And then 18 and onwards, I think, is good for surgeries. This is my own view. If anyone disagrees with it, feel free and give me a reasoning in the comments below. But this is how I view social transition.
Allow children to feel what they feel, because I felt the way that I felt for as long as I can remember, and it's something that I cannot deny. You know, although my mother is supportive, when I was younger, I wasn't allowed to wear boys' clothes because that wasn't right. Now I know we're talking about transitioning. It doesn't always have to be hormones. It's like transitioning in society, so being able to dress more masculine.
Yes.
I did when I was younger, but as I got into middle school, kids change. People are mean.
People are mean.
I dressed how I would in society, so I dressed like a girl, whatever. But I think that children should be allowed to.
Clothes aren't gendered.
And whatever way makes them feel comfortable.
It's scary the amount of governments that are trying to put in laws to stop the ability of, like, stop people from transitioning. Here in the UK, it is our new Prime Minister strongly disagrees with it, and a lot of the cabinet members have spoken about things being too woke. Already, you have to jump through several hoops, and trans healthcare in the NHS is so severely underfunded. Privately, fine, but not everyone has the money to pay for it, especially in this sort of crisis. It's like, I don't know how much it costs privately for hormones, but as far as I'm aware, I think I've seen some videos saying it's about 150 quid a month. And then your top surgery, you're looking at roughly anywhere between 6 and 8 grand. Consultations are probably about £200 to £300 each. it's not cheap. It's not easy. No one would choose to, well, some people choose to spend this sort of money on such big procedures, but realistically, it'd be easier if you didn't have to.
So I work with children. This is where I have like the biggest problem with the trans stuff is with the children because they...
What about the children?
You want to inject them with the hormones to stop their puberty, their normal puberty. They haven't even developed the prefrontal cortex yet, and you want to stop their natural puberty from occurring to affirm their gender, and then later on they regret it. I think that's not a good thing.
See, that's why this is a loaded question, because transition can mean many things for children.
Yep.
Now, I totally, as a transsexual person, disagree with giving children hormone blockers, medication, surgery, but what I do agree with is socially transitioning, which means what?
Social transition, yes.
Okay, I did that in the 60s and 70s. My parents dressed me like fuck, I was a boy, you know, I didn't have any problems because I just lived, we used to call it a tomboy, right? So that was totally, and I went through puberty and I did all the things. I do not believe children can make those choices, and I do not believe it's okay and ethical for a parent to make those choices for a child.
Interesting.
But I do believe gender dysphoria exists in children.
Yes.
100% it's there. But to give medication to a child is so unethical to me that you would actually, exactly what you said, you're stunting brain growth, you're stunting all of these things. They don't have enough research on it. So I'm in agreement with transitioning medically for children is not okay for me, but I do believe in a social space.
There should be stages of it.
Transition, it's interesting to me because we can't control what happens in a social situation.
That's right.
So to me, and we talked about suicide rates among young trans people, this whole ideology is telling people to derive their value off of what somebody else is saying about them, what somebody else affirms to them. So we say that
but
being is the problem.
Being accepted by society is such a big and important thing. I think for everyone, no matter how you identify and no matter who you are, it's such an important thing just to be accepted in society.
And we're not allowing people to be who they are, and that's why they're committing suicide. But maybe it has to do with the messaging that we're sending to these kids, that you derive your value from if somebody uses a correct pronoun, or you derive your value if this person accepts you for wearing a dress. Be who you are, but tell them to be empowered about it and not get that empowerment from somebody else. Like that.
You can be empowered about it, but you gain a lot of empowerment through other people. Like, surely that's just how we work as a society, no? Surely that's just how it is. Might just be me.
That's really kind of inconsiderate to say that someone would take their life because what someone else says. To somebody, that is important. To somebody, I know have friends who their family does not use the correct pronouns and they've transitioned and they live in the same household. This person struggles with depression and anxiety. Could you imagine living in an environment like that where you're no longer validated? That's coming from your own parents.
But if you base your validation off of other people, this is a hard truth, but if your sole validation...
No, you definitely have to do it. Listen, I could give people a shit whatever things about me. I do what I want. But for everyone, that's not the case because everybody has different personalities.
Right, but that doesn't make it any... That doesn't mean that
but it's still,
we should
but
be
what you're not
acknowledging.
listen, what you're not acknowledging though is that in that environment it is not supported.
I'm acknowledging that. I'm just saying that we're saying that for some reason they should look for that validation from somebody else rather than find it within.
When you love somebody and you have a family, you want them to
But
validate.
you're focusing not on the individual, you're focusing on the people outside of that individual.
But you can have both.
But part of being a person is you need to be validated. You don't need to be validated ever in your life. From your family or your friends.
I get my validation from within. And
Okay.
Right, but if we're talking about children,
of course he does.
Okay, if we're talking, okay, I was an 8-year-old when I found out that I wasn't biologically male, right? I was 8 when I found out that I wasn't the same as my brothers. Okay, and so going through that process, I attempted suicide 4 times because my mother was like, "Well, you are a girl. When you're 8 and you're 12 and you don't have anyone else that is in your space, when you don't have anyone else that lives in the same house as you to tell you you're okay, where are you supposed to go? How are you supposed to garner your own self?
You can't really have that much self-validation when you're that young. You get it from everyone around you. Yeah.
As a father, you know, my duty is to raise my children the way I believe is right.
Oh,
And
no.
if my child somehow struggles with this, which is fine, we'll have that conversation. But I'm going to let it play out the way I believe it should be played out.
Oh, no.
And at 18 years old, you can do whatever you want to
Good.
do. If you don't want to wear dresses, that's fine.
I'm impressed A little bit. I mean, as much as it's suppressing it until the age of 18, because if you're trans, you know, some people discover it very early on when they're kids. Some people don't discover it until they're a lot later on in life. But at least he's willing to let his kids do the thing and discover themselves for who they are.
I mean, just wearing if you want to dress like a boy, don't make you want to be a boy. Don't mean you have to be a boy. My mom was a tomboy, and my mom had me and my brother, and she's a woman, you know, and she lives like that. But you know, you may want to dress a little different. Maybe a boy
gender expression is different to gender identity.
That don't mean you need to transition to something else. So I want that to play out until my child is old enough to make that decision on their own. Also, you have to teach your children to have balance. Because if you just want mommy and daddy to acquiesce to everything you want, that's not reality. You have to
understand. I really need to yawn again. Sorry. Fuck.
And if mom and dad may not see me this way, they love me. I see myself this way, and I disagree with how they speak to me or how but I love them as well. I love, like my son, if he said that he was, and I'm a Christian and I don't believe in homosexuality.
Oh no.
I don't. I respect anybody that feel that way. I'd never, protest you at all. If my son came to me, it would be a struggle for me to want to go to his wedding. I'm just going to be honest.
Oh.
But I think that my son should understand this is the way my dad feel. I love him. This is the way I feel, and we have mutual love. And that don't mean I hate you. That just mean we disagree. And
I can agree to disagree.
Sentiment would be, and I think it's the same on this panel. Like, there's no hate in any of this. Of every single person on this side. And we may think of things differently, but we love each other. It can't be one-sided.
I grew up with a positive father figure.
This is good.
I think for me it's surprising because I would believe that a woman a person who's born as a woman who now identifies as a man didn't have a positive role model as a man.
Okay.
Or they felt somewhat insecure as a woman, which makes them feel a certain way and want to be a certain
interesting views here.
Their father never was, or whatever the case may be. And so it was very interesting. I mean, being honest, it was interesting to see pretty much a majority of you guys come forward.
That's so great. I think that's really important that you say that, because I do think a lot of people probably feel that way about guys like me, right? That our fathers we didn't have the right upbringing or what. My father was amazing. I grew up really like a little boy. I always felt like a little boy. My parents actually raised me, and I'm 59 years old, so that was in the 60s and the 70s when we didn't even talk about this kind of stuff. But my parents actually felt it from me. So I think that that's a misconception that people think about people like us.
Any good father pushes their child to feel self-love and to feel like
interesting
they can
concept.
do who they want, do what they want, and have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Like our founding fathers, and so it's fatherlessness or having a missing dad is a pandemic in its own, and it's one that obviously I'm sure Brandon can attest to. It's so critical to have a father in the house because kids get lost when they don't have one, and having a father that's loving and strong
I mean, what about the lesbian? I'm doing what these guys are doing and be like, but what about blah? What about people that grow up with two mums? What about people that grow up with single mums? What about people that grow up with two dads? If they're so hellbound on these gender roles and this like a binary standard, what about people that grow up with parental figures? What if someone has two parental figures that both identify as non-binary? What then? Someone might take on a traditional father role and someone might take on the traditional mother role, but
someone you can rely on is the reason why we're all comfortable with who we are.
I had several different father figures in my life, so it wasn't I had a dad, but then I had my grandfather and I had my uncle. It takes a village to raise a child, right? But all of those different perspectives raised me as a well-rounded human. If we take the masculinity out of it, just as a human, I got to see different perspectives. And so now as a father that has given birth to a child, and that child being a male, right, I'm able to raise him with those same ideals.
Good on you, Lucky.
That I'm able to identify because of the father figures that I had.
I didn't have my father growing up. He was not present in my life at all. So it showed me that some men can step up, like my grandfather and my stepfather, who had taken me in and showed me how to take care of myself, how to be you know, strong and dependable. And all I've been able to do is give more love to all people that I interact with. Right. So it's really important for me to have those figures.
I think this is a really important thing to show people that are watching this, because a lot of times I feel like we can blame any issues in society or anything that arises on the generation that came before us. So any issues that arise in our society, it's like there's not always a reason why it's happening. We just need to address the issue and solve it.
I grew up with all women. My parents were divorced and I lived with my mom. I had my aunts. So I was raised by women, but my dad was there sometimes, and then my stepdad took me in as his own, so I had my stepdad as a father figure.
I grew up with all women as well. My mom used to tell me I have to be your mom and your dad. So like there'd be times where I got both. Like she was super sweet with me or really strict on me, and like she taught me a lot as well. Like growing up with women, it taught me a lot of vulnerability.
No, when you were talking to you, I was like, I relate to you very well. But yeah.
Listening to all your guys' points, I would definitely say, yeah, I did have a father figure. He was in the Marines, and he has this very like toxic masculinity mindset, a lot of anger built up that I can definitely tell he suppressed, you know, in the Marines, because that's what he was taught to do. That's what the Marines are about. He always carried that with him, and I think that's what he tried to instill in me and my siblings at a very young age, which made it hard for me to be vulnerable with myself. And I just saw a lot of issues that were, you know, very violent sometimes. And since coming out as trans, I feel like he's been more willing to understand me more and to figure out who I am as a person. And because of that, I feel like our relationship has definitely got a lot stronger since then.
I can't imagine what it was to come home and then try to be vulnerable after suppressing so much pain and hurt for years. So it's good to hear that, you know, he's learning and kind of evolving and opening up. That's something where, you know, you guys were talking about vulnerability, right? And it's like there's times when it's good to be hard.
I don't show emotion as much as I'd like.
Oh, interesting. This is gonna...
I definitely have sensed and noticed since transitioning that being on testosterone has made me cry less.
I've heard this from my trans friends that were on testosterone. Apparently you can't cry. Like you can show emotion, but apparently you can't really cry when being on it. I've realized how squeaky my chair is. I'm trying to get comfortable. I'm so sorry. We'll go back. We'll go back.
I definitely have sensed and noticed since transitioning that being on testosterone has made me cry less.
I've heard from a lot of my like trans friends that are on testosterone that they just can't cry. Like tears don't happen. They can show emotions, they can be vulnerable, they can be emotional, but crying is something that they've really struggled to do.
Which is very interesting because I believe that before I transitioned and started taking testosterone, I feel like not being able to cry as much, it makes me like, I'm like, damn, I wish I could cry right now, but it's not gonna happen. Hi, I'm Gibby and I'm a trans man. Before transitioning, I guess only presented as lesbian, but since transitioning, I've been able to be more comfortable with my sexuality. I've definitely seen on like dating apps and stuff, a lot of conservative men fetishizing trans individuals, and it's interesting because a lot of the time they say that they don't identify as gay or, you know, within the community, and yet they're fetishizing my community.
Interesting.
So I don't know about you guys, but I always speak my mind. If I feel a certain way, I'll tell somebody, and that probably cost me a lot of relationships, but that's just how I am.
Translation, he's an asshole. I'm going slightly stir crazy. How? This is an hour and a half already. We're almost there. We've got 3 minutes. I'm losing the plot. I'm losing my mind. I'm losing the will to will. Back to it.
So
I don't think there's anything wrong with, I know we talked about vulnerability, you know, a long time ago. I don't think there's anything wrong with being vulnerable. I think
Good.
Said,
there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable.
For knowing when it's okay to be vulnerable,
Oh.
and being self-aware of that, and then, you know, being strong when you need to, and being sad you know, when it's appropriate. But I certainly am not as vulnerable or not as emotional as probably I should, just because it's not something that I always did growing up. But I don't feel like I have any real issues like suppressing. I just feel like I kind of get it out in other ways.
Yeah, that's very.
I don't like when he says get it out in other ways. That worries me.
My personal experiences, like, because I was one, you know, to transition at a very young age, and my dad being in the military, being a veteran, he would see me being vulnerable at times, and he'd be like, "Well, don't you want to be a man?" And that would make me feel like, "Oh, am I not supposed to be vulnerable anymore?" Now that I'm, like, you know, I'm gonna transition, and it was just like very hard for me because, like I said earlier, it was hard for me to have that father figure at that time of my life.
You know, my process of, you know, digesting emotions is by myself, and I use that time to self-reflect. So if I'm feeling angry, or if I'm, you know, feeling really passionate about something, or whatever the emotion is, sometimes I pull back and I don't show that emotion because I'm reflecting on it and trying to understand why it's there. So I think a lot of times
interesting,
men aren't showing enough emotion, but in reality they're just self-assessing why that emotion is there.
Nothing wrong with self-assessing your emotions.
Right. I think when I was female, I was much more angry. I was just reactive, angry, like, grr. And then as I became a man, I cry more now as a man than I ever did as a woman. And I think it's because I'm at peace with myself. And so before I was just so angry about being a woman and everyone calling me she and seeing a girl, and I just be, you know, as a fashion model. So that really just took it to a whole other level. And then once I became a man, it was like, whoa, I can actually relax. And I think I do the same thing. I self-reflect on myself. I want to be this type of man that is
self-reflection's good.
Is more accessing my own emotions.
Thank you, everyone.
Right on. Thank you.
That was cool. That was cool.
Thank you.
So there you have it. That is trans versus conservative men. Is masculinity disappearing in America? Very interesting conversations and a lot of heated debates. I disagreed with a good portion of both sides of things, and also agreed with, well, I agreed more with the trans men rather than conservative men. But yeah. If anyone has any comments or thoughts about this video and any of the prompts, please make sure you comment them down below. If you enjoyed this type of content, then make sure you like and subscribe. I will be doing more reaction videos because I really enjoy this sort of content, and filming this sort of content because I want to learn and acknowledge other people's experiences. And so, thank you so much for watching. I've been your captain, and I will catch you all on the next video. Goodbye.